teacher where I have like 40 people in the class and another 100 people outside of the class.
Oh,
So
wow.
we all have to like be able to communicate, and we all need to give each other feedback. But it's also hard in a big classroom to give thoughtful feedback. So how we can do that, like pulling it down smaller peer to peer, I think that's really good. So for all of that.
Awesome. Okay. Russell.
I'm Russell Epp. I'm a senior lecturer in the Wisconsin School of Business teaching accounting. And we actually have in one of our classes a memo that students hand in and do peer review in terms of writing and how well constructed it is, things of that nature. And I'm looking to see if we can take that same process and do it within the peer review process inside Canvas so we don't have to use paper to do it.
Okay. How many drafts does the peer review process go for?
They hand in their draft, their final version, and then that version gets peer reviewed by others in the classroom. So we have to use classroom time to spend peer reviewing, and then we take those peer reviews, and then we also finish grading for other criteria that we as instructors look for.
Okay.
And for me, it's just one, not only the usage of class time to do it, which I think could be moved outside of class throughout Canvas,
Sure.
but then also the use of paper could be reduced too.
Sure. Sounds good. Theo.
Hi, I'm Theo. I work in the business school in teaching and learning and help with a lot of instructors with peer reviews and of different, all kinds. Yeah.
All right. John.
I'm John. I'm in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, and I'm just here to see if maybe I could use this in my classes to give the students more feedback and make it easier for me to grade their assignments.
Okay. Sounds good. Sarah.
I'm a teaching assistant in the Department for French and Italian, and for me the feedback is a big part of the peer review, being that I'm interested in how we get students to give each other feedback in a way that kind of cuts time for the instructor, that doesn't have to necessarily, I'm wondering how it can all work together so the instructor kind of saves some time maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also interested in the instructor's role in how do you guide peer reviews so that they don't just like go totally in any random direction that they want. Yeah. And I guess mostly for writing assignments, mostly for drafts and writing assignments.
Sounds great. Charles.
Hi everyone, I'm Charles. I'm also a grad student in Department of French and Italian, and I have never used peer review on Canvas, so I'm interested in the very quote-unquote practical aspects, so how to create an assignment, or examples of how other people have done this, or how to create a rubric to grade peer review.
Sounds good. All right.
I'm Lauren Rosen. I direct the collaborative language program for UW System, and it's probably been about 2 years since I used the Canvas tool for peer review, so and I found it pretty clunky back then, so I'm kind of curious just to see how and if it's changed any.
Okay. Sounds good. Margine.
I'm Margine. I work for doing academic technology and consultant, teaching and learning consultant. And from that perspective, I'm interested in seeing how the tool works and how it might be something that I would suggest if it's the right fit for the folks that I work with. But as a student, this past January, I was in a class where we were assigned a peer review, and and it was kind of a hot mess. Like who's doing it? Just the operational, not the actual peer review, but the operationalizing it, where are you gonna do mine? Okay, I'll do yours, and you did. And so it was friends did each other's, and they've been, and everybody.
Was this an in-class peer review hot mess?
No, it was write your paper, and before you turn it in, it has to be peer reviewed by one of your colleagues. So.
Got it.
I was kind of jumping in on a cohort of Doctor of Nursing students. They had all been in class before, and I was just kind of crashing their course. And they knew each other. It wasn't a big deal, but just kind of
feedback along the lines of this was great.
Can we coordinate better?
Okay.
Yeah.
John.
John Martin, doing academic technology, and I guess my big question about peer review is how much of it can be students, student-led, how much will students catch, Can it save time for the instructors because students get 80% of what you might want to give as feedback? Should we use it for grading, or is it just feedback to assist us in grading? That's a loaded question.
Dan.
I'm Dan Pell. I'm a lot like Margine. And I have a lot of the same thoughts about peer review. It's one of the features of Canvas that I never used when I was teaching. And so I don't have any first-hand experience with it. I did a lot of peer review, but never through Canvas. And so I always wonder, is there a place for this in some of the courses that I consult?
Sure. Bing.
Hello everybody, I'm Bing. At present, I'm a visiting scholar in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. 2 months ago, I just came from China. In my university, actually, we do not have such a system about peer review, so I'm very curious about how it can work and how effective it can work.
Sure.
So that's why I'm here today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome. Megan.
Yeah, Megan Adams. I teach in the information school.
Okay.
And this semester I'm teaching a course online. Students are recording and submitting a lightning talk on a topic.
Oh,
and
a lightning talk, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd like them to peer review that, so I'd like to be able to use a tool to help distribute that to them.
Could you share what a lightning
useful.
talk is?
Yeah, so a short conference-style presentation is about 7 minutes long. It'll have slides and narrative. Really, it's sort of a very abbreviated format of a conference talk, where they try to communicate the most important parts of an argument.
Okay. Is it just an audio file? I mean, is it
It'll be
just
a
a lecture
video file.
capture, but there's a video as well, or?
So hopefully they will submit.
Hopefully.
They will submit a screen recording that also has voiceover.
Okay, sounds good. And their face, I assume, or maybe?
Some of them may
Okay.
just use slides.
Okay, sounds good. Cory.
My name is Cory Schmidt. I'm an instructional designer with Do It Academic Technology. Still new to campus, so getting used to the Canvas LMS. So trying to learn how the groups and feedbacks, peer review works with the system, and hear what other faculty have experienced and have questions about as well.
Awesome. So before we get into the idea, or get into the sort of nuts and bolts of the tool within Canvas, I'm really curious about why you actually want to use peer review to begin with as a concept. So I'd like for you to take 3 to 5 minutes to reflect on some of these questions. For you as an individual, or as an instructor or instructional designer, what is peer review and what is the goal of it? Is it just so students can correct their spelling errors, or is there actually more substantive feedback that you're looking for in the peer review goal? And what experiences have you had in the classroom? I think we've been through some of these already. And this is a question that I was thinking of from an instructional perspective. Is there a difference between undergrad use of peer review and graduate student peer review? If so, how does that alter your conception of what peer review is as a process? And if you had some examples where it completely fell apart, or Jeannie said it was a hot mess, or if you have examples of a raving success with Canvas peer review, or just peer review as a general statement, what were some of the features that led to that success? So I'll give you about 3 to 5 minutes to think about that individually, and whenever you're ready to discuss with your table mate, I think everyone is paired up perfectly. Charles, you work with Lauren as well. And then we'll go from there.
Or are we trying to do it?
We are partners, and since I'm just a techie guy, the show is coming.
The last experience probably was like yours. I never used Sandbox Canvas.
We do it just in one class so far. Just to teach students the experience of but also and we don't even grade them on how well they perform. We just thought if you didn't know before, it's before, it's up to we're not even trying to evaluate just want them to be
So that's
so
like hard. That was in that class. Like,
each class is 40, and there's 7 different sections. So it's a lot. It's a 301, so Portland does sometimes teach it. But Portland is responsible for it's 301. We've done so much more.
So in sort of a certain way, the peer review process is more
yes and no. So like you said, like getting an because it's also like stuff that's not just how do we capture mistakes. It cut down the right or wrong. And when
I always say, so you see my face, you're in the wrong side.
Right.
It's a whole separate course.
It also reflected on even with
which is why they get in trouble.
even with sort of having a review process.
Case instructions and they're quite so you see right there, instructions. So they open print them and then we end up actually everything which is fine, it's working. But I also rather than take 25 minutes and so my
so I wanted that
or that's the same.
Alright, so let's keep it moving on a little bit. So in some of the conversations that I was able to hear, it seems like there's a lot of diverse uses of peer review, giving answers and coordinating sort of how you arrived at a certain answer or an equation process. Also through the fashion industry and designing, checking designs for cultural sensitivity within the group is a very interesting use of peer review. Just wanted to sort of make a list of, or a few examples, or why do you bother with peer review to begin with? Because you want to use it in Canvas, you're at least tempted by the idea, but for what purpose is a general statement? What are some of the goals you have for your own peer reviews?
I'll start if you want, but I think, but I'm in art and design, and we have, thousands of excellent answers to any particular problem. So we're not trying to get to the right answer. Mm-hmm. We're trying to figure out how to build something that addresses the best way that we can. So the need for multiple perspectives is gigantic. So, and the students think of things I would never think of. I don't want to be the arbiter of what everyone should have, and they'll notice things and come of perspectives I would never have. And it's good at helping each other. They also need to learn how to give that feedback to other people too. Yeah. So it's mm-hmm. really integral in what we do.
There's a huge history in design and art for peer review as well. So in some ways, you're so far ahead of much of other academia, especially at the undergraduate level, where we have always been taught it's only our own work and it's between us and the instructor and not for anyone else to see. And the sad part about that is that people aren't used to getting feedback from their peers.
Or giving it.
Or giving it. So when they're afraid to give it other than, oh, nice job, friend, like me. Or if it's not positive constructive criticism, it's like, oh, you hate me and you hate, not that I can improve with my work here, but that you hate me, and they take it personally because they don't have the experience with that.
Right.
And speaking of that, Martina, in the example where you said you crashed a course, what was the purpose of that feedback? Was it in a nursing course?
Yeah, it was a doctor of nursing practitioner course. That was they had a 3-course sequence on it's their teaching certificate.
Sure.
So practical nurses who want to teach, and I'm doing curriculum and instruction, so I wanted to learn about nursing and curriculum instruction. But the purpose of that was to make sure that we hadn't missed any big chunks of the assignment, right? That people were meeting the assignment and to give some feedback. And a lot of these students were learning how to use APA for the first time, even though they were, that's the citation.
American Psychological Association.
Yeah, American Psychological Association, MLA. This was they were used to using AMA, which is American Medical Association, so we're flipping citation style, so they didn't check each other's.
Okay, so more formatting, not say formatting, but more copy editing type?
I would say so, but also checking on ideas and things like that, because there's complex ideas at that level. But just to add on to the goals of peer review, especially at the novice level, is practice. If they have enough scaffolding, practice talking and learning and thinking in the way of the discipline. So adopting some of the language and thought processes of the discipline that they're playing with.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And Russell, you said you have a final project example of peer review. What is in the peer review that you're using, what is the goal of it?
In large part, the peer review process is in regards to the second line down, which is about giving feedback, and what the other person mentioned about receiving the feedback. It's just as a way to practice that exercise. And we don't even grade how well they provided feedback or peer reviewed. It's just whether or not they did or didn't do it. But it's just a matter of practicing.
Do you give them examples of poor and sufficient feedback?
So we don't really look at the quality of the feedback or the peer review. It's kind of binary, you did it or you didn't.
Okay.
It's more about them practicing that.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome. And John, you had an interesting example that I haven't heard yet of using in a mathematical example of peer review. Do you mind sharing that example?
Well, it wasn't something really that I did, but what I'm looking for is...
That's okay too, it's a goal, yeah.
Hmm?
It's a goal, that's what you would like, yeah?
Yeah, that where the dream would be one student would look at the other student's homework and be able to assess, did they solve the problem, did they get the right answer, did they go through a logical sequence of steps, did they make any illogical leaps in their argument. But if they're that good, do they really need to take the course? So,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a, that's a stretch.
Okay.
But at least to if I'm looking at their review, then it would give me a heads up. Oh, I need to look here. This part is questionable, or this part's okay.
Sure.
And it would be speed up the grading process, perhaps.
Awesome.
And sometimes somebody else looking at you know, when I'm just learning something, I can see what somebody else did in a different way than looking at my own, because you're not as attached to it. So, and that's a good lesson all by itself. So.
And I think that that's kind of where I was coming from originally, but I can see there are other benefits to doing this of getting feedback, giving feedback.
Awesome. John.
So getting to this point, self-testing is a really strong way to learn for your own work as well. And oftentimes, that's a wonderful point, Carolyn, that you can't see it in your own work, but it's really obvious in somebody else's work. And once you see it in somebody else's work, then you're primed to look back at your own work and say, oh, maybe this isn't the most straightforward way of doing this. So just peer review is a way of sharing other ways of thinking about things outside of our own brains. Is like that alone is I think worthwhile.
And for those of you that have had a positive experience with peer review, what was positive about it? For me, for my own personal example, we had a dissertator seminar in the Department of French, and for everyone that was a dissertator, we all wrote together, shared drafts, exchanged, and each week we met for 2.5 hours, and talked about one individual person's draft or chapter, and sort of that intense feedback was for me a very formative experience, and sort of the concentration of being at the center of the room and also having 6 people coming at you with questions and comments. For me, that was groundbreaking because I was outside of my own head. But for other people with positive experiences, and we'll get to the negative, don't worry, what made it a good experience for you if it was positive with peer review, either in Canvas or just in your own professional circumstances? Sarah?
We had a peer review happen in a creative writing class in French, and the peer review was definitely an intermediary step before any kind of grading or evaluation would happen. So the peer review happens in the sort of writing and revising stage before it hits any kind of submission in a way that the instructor would like evaluate it officially. And students really appreciated having that mark a point for revising, and they wrote like a lot of self-assessment. In a lot of self-assessments and reflections, they said that it was definitely building on the multiple perspectives of, I did not see that before, I thought I was clear, but it wasn't as clear, and so I can articulate myself better now. And they really appreciated it. I think felt confidence actually boosted when they submitted the final project, even though the confidence might have been like a little nerve-wracking to release it to their peers at the time.
Because the vulnerability of it.
Yeah, so there's vulnerability, but I think in the end it really paid off. Yeah.
Awesome. Dan?
So I used it a lot, not through Canvas. It was systematically part of the ESL courses, writing courses that I worked on. And there were a number of things, reasons for it that was on the course. One is that, of course, the students are getting their peers' eyes on their first draft before the instructor's eyes are on there. So they're submitting a better draft. But another one was that when working with students from all sorts of academic backgrounds, they're being asked to write things that they don't necessarily know the rules of. They don't know the expectations for that type of writing in this culture, and getting peer review from other people and seeing other people's writing allowed them to realize, oh, okay, that's an approach that I can use. And that might be some language or structure that would fit, or at least now I know what somebody else is trying to do when they're assignments. So there was a lot of learning about the genre that came with it as well.
Every project we do gets peer reviewed sort of in person most of the way through most of our program. It's like essential, and I think that, but like doing it online and how to do it more effectively is like what I would really like to find out about. But I think it both, like we tell the students, like as you're working, you have to work as though your life depends on getting this best, and they do, like they're super passionate about doing it. But then once you stop and you get feedback, you have to step back as though you're not connected to it at all, and that learning to be able to be objective about your work and objective about other people's work is what can then allow you to go back in and make the work better. So it both, gives them confidence, they can talk about what they're doing more, but also that being able, the revision process and learning that things get revised and not just you make it once and it's done. That's probably the biggest part to me that I think is the most important.
All right, well, speaking of online, let's get to Canvas and enjoy ourselves.
Do you guys are you strictly showing the Canvas tool?
Yep, it's just going to be the Canvas tool.
Although if there are other tools and techniques that you want to put, you'd like to contribute, again, the activity sheet would be a wonderful place to do that.
Okay, so this is an assignment that I created, so I'm going to start sort of with the activation of peer review within an assignment of Canvas. If I'm going too fast or if I make a false move, Cliff, you are in charge of that. Just to give you an idea of what it looks like on the instructor side, the struggle that I have is that I'm not a student in a course that has ever used peer review. So my two charming guinea pigs have agreed to be the students in the course, and one is going to show their screen so we can see it from the student side. So you can evaluate also as well whether or not this is an effective use of students' attention, whether or not this is something that's too complicated for them, and they're not focusing on the actual content of the assignment itself. So creating a simple assignment, just sort of adventures in peer review. This is in the Sandbox, so if you would like to participate in the activity, feel free as well. So as just the title of the assignment, Adventures, I put in some information about the assignment itself. So clicking on the edit side, to get into the background of the assignment itself. I've given students some instructions, pretty simple, to submit an assignment and then comment on the work of another person. Obviously, this is perhaps not a model of a way to write the assignment details for a course. This is just for the sake of the thought experiment. So scrolling down a little bit, you see you have a box here for whether or not peer reviews are required. So obviously activating peer reviews, and then I've chosen to manually assign peer reviews. The reason why is because there are over 300 individuals and students that are in this course, and so I don't want to flood their email inbox saying you've been assigned a peer review for a course that they're not actually active in. So the reason why I've picked manually assigned is because my true peers are here, and they're going to participate in this process with me. So far, so good? Have I lost anyone?
Just a question.
Yes.
And don't do it and hit save, but if you click on automatically assign peer reviews, do a whole bunch of other options come up?
Good. Well, that's
And
quick.
if you click on it without hitting save, you won't
That's
allow
what I
this.
had checked.
Go ahead and do it, yeah, just.
Yeah, okay.
So if you want
That's right.
each individual student to review 295, you can put up the total number of students that you have, or each student just reviews one other person, and it would be randomly assigned, I would assume.
So you could have them, everybody have to do 5, but it randomly assigns who those 5 are.
And then this is the portion of the assignment that always throws me off. The peer review has to come after the date for when the assignment is due. So for example, Russell, in your case, if my understanding is correct, they would submit draft 1, and then the peer review, let's say draft 1 is submitted on Monday. You would assign peer review to be completed by sometime after Monday, let's say Friday. So this is different than when the assignment is due.
There's an asterisk there that if you don't put it, then it'll happen when it's due.
So how do you? So what if a student submits at 11:59 and the assignment's due at 11:59? There's no peer review.
When it closes, it goes off.
Good point. Exact time I don't know, but I would say that if that's one of the shortcomings is if a student does not submit when it is due, this triggers when it is due, and they will be left out of the peer review because they don't have a submission.
And
So-
the person that was supposed to review them does not have a student.
Well, and there I don't know. Does it do this? Does it satisfy the 5 before everybody submits, or if it just at the moment the assignment is due, Canvas kicks in and says, okay, everybody who's due is part of, everybody who has a submitted object is part of the pool. So I don't know which one it goes, but that is one of the shortcomings that I've heard about. I don't know if it's been fixed, but yeah, if students do not have something submitted by the due date, they get left out of the review process.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna guess, looking at that great text and underneath, that messy option is the reality, and that what you probably wanna do is set the assigned reviews like 12 hours or 24 hours after the due date and totally slam anybody who's late because they'll get left out of the process.
And tell
that little tiny gray text looks like Canvas's solution to a big problem.
Yeah, and tell the students, even if you're not done, you gotta submit something. Submit something, even if it's a 80% done solution. Get it in there so you can be involved in
At the bottom of our activity sheets, we have several other labs that we've had faculty come in, and this is one of the things that they've talked about. And the solution is, as Dan says, make sure you give them enough time so that if people turn it in at 11:59 and 0.3 seconds, they get cut off.
Yeah.
So give them that buffer to be able to get it in.
So aside from those nuts and bolts, how are we doing so far? For those of you that are brand new to the tool, lost anyone completely? No, totally in the weeds? Alright, I'm just going to save this just to make sure that we're all good. Sarah and Charles, and anyone else who wants to participate,
Should I come up there?
can you please submit your assignment?
From here? Or shall I do it over there?
You can, you can do it over there first.
I just submitted one too, just
Awesome.
for the sake of submitting
Okay.
something.
So we're looking back at the actual assignment section for itself. And this,
I wanna
again,
see what happens. 'Cause I
and
know
again,
they
this
don't
is from the
decide.
instructor view. This is not from the student view that we'll see in a second. So over here on the right, clicking on peer reviews, you can see that I have everyone that is listed in the course. But because Charles is great, I can give him a specific student. So say, for example, I want him to review Lauren's work as well. I can add those 2 students to his workflow into his queue, so that he has to review them as well. So far, so good? Have all three of you submitted?
Mhm.
Awesome.
I want to review DMs.
It's too late, you missed the deadline.
I probably
Deadline's done.
1:35.
All right, Sarah. So now that you submitted your assignment, can you come up here and show us? I guess we can do it this way. From the student perspective, you've completed the assignment.
Mhm.
Have I assigned you?
I think I was automatically assigned to Charles, maybe.
But we haven't put anything in yet, we're on the end of.
Correct. Yeah, and just for the sake of time, I'm just going to do these three.
I'll go with that.
And is there a save button at the bottom? No.
Adjusted.
All right, Sarah. We'll have to refresh your page. And this is yours.
Probably anonymous. So.
Okay, so this is from the student perspective of the course.
Well, I missed one. Do you
You
think
have
it
to-
came up in? Do you think it needs to be saved here?
Oh, there's an assign peer reviews button on the far right.
You're
I'll bet
right.
you have to click that.
Aha.
That's for automatically assigning. I'm manually doing,
Oh.
Oh.
right? Because I've gone to Sarah. If you go up to your name,
But it's,
Oh yeah.
so I've given her Charles.
Okay. And let me see if I go in here.
And-
Oh, here it is.
So going back into the assignment. So this is again, this is another step for students
Very solid.
to realize that that the peer review is found in the assignment, right? Charles.
It's also found, I believe, in the to-do list on their dashboard.
Ah, okay. Should we just look at it real quick?
That's great, yeah.
Do it.
Dashboard.
See
Oh.
that, and I'm hoping that's the case.
You have a lot of things to do. Nothing.
Great projects.
I was wrong.
So, well, it does go in
What's
here.
the exclamation point mean? If you roll over, it does it give you a
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
I was trying this on one, so even if I do this manually. it's
So
not-
then you can see Charles's response. This is the response Jeff gave. I hope it works. Smiley face. Charles.
So I do that and then I don't.
So
know
can
where
they
that
give each
goes.
other a grade or an
Peer
input?
review.
It's just plain text or.
Oh.
Mhm.
So they don't get speed grade or
They don't get
comment.
any comments.
Maybe like
There's a comment box over there on the right.
So those are like general comments that like in speed grading you can pop in like
Say, like,
specific like sentence constructions.
You might, I didn't do this for this one, but you might be able to add the rubric from the original assignment, and that appears within the peer review process. So whatever rubric I as the instructor have assigned
Oh, I see.
appears for student use.
There we go.
That's my
Also,
understanding.
this was a text-based
Uh-huh.
assignment.
Mhm.
If it were uploaded to Google Doc or a Word document, the students then would get all of those add-on.
Of the speed grader.
Of the speed
Okay.
grader, yeah.
So yeah, that does.
We did preserve Excel sheets, you know, like functions and stuff in there.
I've never uploaded I've never dealt with Excel with campus. I would imagine.
Okay.
I've never looked
I
at
would
that.
imagine so, but I know that you can also use Google Drive to submit, so I would imagine Google Sheets would
Okay.
appear just as easily. But I think it always is converted into a PDF anyway, so I don't know if it would be a functional Excel spreadsheet to begin
Okay,
with.
so as long as PDF, I think we'd have to.
Yeah, they're gonna get it. Yeah.
Thanks.
This is the thing about uploads in general for Canvas. If it's submitted as a Google Doc, it won't be a live Google Doc that they can go in and keep on editing even after the assignment date. It takes a snapshot of it, and then you get that version, so it's not live.
Well, but I had.
If you wanna change it to different, to like multiple submission types, I'm happy to just throw some shit in there so you can look at it.
Let's do it.
Oh, sorry.
I think I know what you mean.
That's how I do it.
This is one.
Oh, I see. Oh, good.
So the other nice thing about that peer review is that in addition to the comment box, they also can do multimedia comments. So they can do an audio walkthrough
Yeah.
or
Well, actually,
screencast or maybe not a
yeah,
screencast,
but there's two that never
but
turn those in.
add sort of a narrative, so it's not just potentially hurtful words without any of the nonverbal softeners that we have in conversations. They can talk through it, say, I like what you did here. The one criticism that I have would be, it's not a big thing, da-da-da-da-da-da.
And Lauren, what did you want to share?
I can share whatever kind of document you want.
An Excel sheet, for example.
Oh, yeah,
Excel
upload
sheet or
a-
Google or whatever.
Let's do you said an Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah,
let's do an Excel
that'd
spreadsheet.
be great.
Do you have to change the assignment?
No,
Submission
you can
type?
resubmit.
But the submission type is
I can
text entry.
resubmit, yeah,
Oh,
it was
oh.
allowing me to resubmit, so.
Throw it in Word doc.
It's already, yeah, did it?
Yeah, yeah. That's nice. Yeah, it's a good idea. Do you remember which things we have?
All right, Lauren, and then whenever you're
Go back to the resubmit here. Windows that are open.
Right. Stage 9 and 13.
And then just for the further sake of the experiment, Sarah, I'm going to add you again. I'm going to add Lauren to you.
Okay.
So you can go
To see if we can peer review a spreadsheet, for example.
Should I resubmit it as a Google file
I kept
or
you.
as it's uploaded?
Upload.
Upload?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if your if you're assigning them, can you assign someone that hasn't turned in their assignment yet?
Probably not, because they wouldn't appear.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question about like.
Can you assign them to review someone else's something, you know?
I've uploaded a Word document.
Yeah, so even
if you
if
wanna
they get zero
assign
for
them.
submission, or
They
they don't
could
want to take
still-
advantage.
Lauren,
of
have you
it,
uploaded yours?
providing that.
I am submitting it right now as an Excel file, so you'll have one of each.
So this is the way the Excel file appears. So it's not at all, I don't know if there's any color coding or concatenation in your original document? No?
I threw a formula in mine.
For the
So-
video.
So it doesn't really, it's not very effective, I think, if we're uploading a spreadsheet. I mean, I would just imagine a series of equations, the formatting's gone. And then Sarah, what would that look like for you? So then on the student side, you can download the file. It doesn't appear automatically as well.
So you click view feedback. There. Oh god, that bug is still there. Okay.
And then you can add your comments.
Yeah, and you can resize that window inside the gray box to make it fit for the
So they can go off the Excel sheet that they downloaded.
Can you do your editing
I
right
do.
there,
Yes.
then?
Well, you can do like some of the markup stuff, yes.
Okay,
Comments.
got it, yeah.
So the same features and tools of the speed grader, but the formatting obviously is a little off, to say the least. So just to me at least, the results of this sort of just poking around at it, I don't know if I would use peer review personally. I'm a little turned off. Lauren, what do you think about the clunkiness of it?
For Excel sheets specifically?
Just as a general statement.
Well,
Not being an instructor and just playing around with it on my own
some
time,
of the
it's
clunkiness of trying to figure out who is supposed to review what,
uh-huh.
I think has been improved.
Okay.
As far as finding what you're supposed to review, but it can still use a little bit more work.
Sure.
You could set it up so that they know that, so that they upload the thing and they know that the expectation is that they download it,
Mhm.
do peer review with, comments from Word and
Yeah.
re-upload it. So rather than trying to navigate the interface.
And I think that brings up a good point that I forgot who, I think is who made it, I think it was Sarah, you mentioned scaffolding and walking students through the peer review process with them in Canvas, because I would imagine there are some students who have never used peer review in Canvas before, just as many instructors have never used peer review. So working with them and walking them through, saying, here's how you download the file, here's how you add your comments, here's how you view someone else's assignment that has been assigned to you. If it doesn't appear in your to-do list, why would you expect that to appear in the actual assignment itself?
And there are links on the top of the second page of the activity sheet. One of the things that I want to point you to is the Writing Center has some really good suggestions for instructors on how to set up peer review, because the other thing is a lot of our students have never done this before, so they don't know how to give good constructive feedback. It might be that they spend all of their time looking at 2 spaces after the period versus good qualitative feedback, constructive feedback.
You're not supposed to do 2 spaces after the period.
We're not going to get into that today.
So in the short time that we have left, I want to give you back some time to think. Now that Dan, yeah.
I was just wanted to follow up on that is that in getting peer review to work in ESL courses, but other courses too, actually training students around how to even speak about someone else's work in a polite and constructive way, as well as giving them a very scaffolded rubric, which maybe gradually you built them up over many assignments to a point where they're able to do it without the scaffolding,
right,
is as much a part of the success of peer review as actually setting it up and making it. I mean, you've got to train, it's a skill, and you've got to help to train people. And when you're looking at people whose language isn't necessarily, their language instruction in their past hasn't prepared them for that, you also have to think of giving them the language that they would even need to do that, so that they can do it confidently and clearly and constructively.
Let me build off on that. The scaling of the rubrics, or the making rubrics increasingly complex, the first time they do peer review, don't give them the super complicated, comprehensive peer reviews thing. Say, do A, B, and C. Make it simple for them. Yeah. And then the second time, they've already done A, B, and C, so now you do D, E, and F, or A, point 1, point 2, point 3, B, point 1, point 2, point 3, and you can get more and more complex to build them up into that case. When you do have a rubric attached, it does show up in their peer review, so it's right there for them to click on and say, what am I supposed to look for again? There it is. It's a visual reminder. It's just-in-time learning for them. Oh yeah, this is what I'm looking for. And that'll help them, again, with their own work as well as they reflect back on what they did.
So in the final few minutes that we have, I want to give you a chance to consider how you would structure your own peer review. We've seen some of the obstacles, some of the roadblocks, some of the considerations for scaffolding, whether or not you give students time in course to work with Canvas and work with you with Canvas. Just to give you a few minutes to think about the project that you're setting up for peer review. So Russell, the example of your papers, what is the duration? What does the timeline look like? Would you give students a week to submit an online assignment, and how would that affect your actual course? And you, Carolyn, as well, integrating 140 students, you said?
Well, within the class, it's like 40 in the class, but anyway, it's just a lot of communication with a lot of people. But in the class, it's about 40.
So just going to give you a few minutes, sort of with your table mate as well, to consider these last questions. How would you time it? Is there a rubric that students would use? How would they know what they're looking for? And would you even use this Canvas tool, or is there another example of peer review that you would use to achieve the same end? So I'll give you a few minutes to think about that, and then we will close up.
I have a quick question for you.
Oh.
While people are talking, could you go back and list just like a one criteria rubric? Because what I'd like to see is when the students go in into their view to do the peer review, do they see your rubric you created? As if we're talking about the rubrics, I'd like to see that if we create one, do they see it?
Okay.
Or is that
So
from us?
on the instructor side, I've added a rubric.
Okay.
There's not much magic to it.
Yep. Perfect.
Let's go back to Adventures in Peer Review. They can see the rubric that I've applied. Sarah goes into Charles's work. The rubric doesn't appear.
Show rubric in the upper right corner.
Right.
Okay.
This is also part of the training that you need to do for the students, because they won't see that.
Right.
So Charles, you've done it all right.
So
Can you
wait.
go on your end and see if that appears?
And is
That's
that the
exactly what-
rubric for the original student's
Yes.
assignment, or is it the rubric
Yes.
for the person giving the feedback?
It is the rubric that I created for the
Yeah.
original assignment.
So there's not a rubric for the peer review, I'm just asking.
That's
Yeah,
great.
but and I think
That's actually,
a workaround that I'm thinking of is you could just create separate assignments, right? Draft 1 is being an assignment that has a specific peer review rubric. Draft 2 having a similar rubric is the final version. That way we're just not confusing students with
Yeah, that's what
different
I
rubrics they have to find and click through, etc. Charles, do you see your comment?
Yes, I see the rubric as it appeared.
And then you got a 5 out of 5.
Yes.
You see the 5.
Awesome.
Okay.
But that's for the original assignment, not for the peer review.
Correct. There's and interesting because I'm on the Canvas guides. If you don't know Canvas guides, it's the instructor, the company that produces Canvas. They put out a bunch of instructional manuals on their Canvas guides. There's an area devoted to software enhancement requests, and one of the requests is allow there to be 2 different rubrics. One is the official teacher rubric, and then one is the student rubric that the student should be using. And so, which means at this point that's not available, but it is something that people have wondered about. So Canvas is considering it, which means don't expect it anytime soon.
Don't be so pessimistic. You seem such an optimist. 2 more quick things about rubrics and expectations. And the speed grader feedback in general, a lot of the students do not know where to look to get the feedback that you've given them in speed grader. So follow through with that and make sure that they know to look at that show feedback. Don't give them feedback on their final paper because they don't care. They've already handed it in, they're looking to the future.
Yeah.
Make the peer review process for the first draft or the second draft, but for the final draft, don't bother because realistically they're not going to look at it. And it won't help them because looking at each other's examples isn't going to help them do their work any better because they've already handed it in. So if you're going to have them learn from each other, an early draft is the way to do it. The last thing is they cannot grade each other's work officially.
Yeah.
You have to be the grader as the instructor. So the feedback that they give each other can inform your grading, and oftentimes it'll catch, Jonathan Gordon talked about it catching like 80 to 90% of what he would have said anyway. So it saved him 80 to 90% of the time because he didn't have to type in all that stuff. They already did it for each other. So that made him, he saw it as a big time saver. But of course you still have to look at it to see the things that they miss in case they've all said, oh, good job to each other.
So Megan, you said you were working in an entirely online course.
Yeah.
Do you think that Canvas, what are you thinking about in terms of using the Canvas peer review? Do you think that's a sufficient solution for you, or do you think you still have some hesitation about that?
I'm nervous about it.
Mhm.
I think, so I'm teaching graduate students.
Okay.
And I'm teaching graduate students in an information field.
Okay.
So hopefully they're slightly predisposed to poking around with online interfaces.
Okay. So
Hopefully that context will help. I'm thinking that I need to give them like a video walkthrough of like,
Mhm.
this is where you click, this is what you expect, this is when to expect what.
Mhm.
And I think I might try it,
Okay.
because otherwise I anticipate a lot of administrative work on my end and making sure that I can get all the things to all the people in all the timing that they need to have those things to be successful.
And I know on the activity sheet there is a tutorial step-by-step guide that you could use to adapt for your own purposes for that. Yeah.
That would be great.
To help students. Yeah.
I would, to address that, Megan, one thing to do is make sure that the first time they do it isn't on their capstone final project.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
build in a low stakes,
Yep.
week 1 or week 2, get to know you, kind of like peer review where they actually try it out there and it doesn't affect their grade at all. So that by the time they get to the important stuff, they've done it before and it's a familiar process.
And so have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to add one thing to what
Yeah.
John was saying is that peer review online is great, but it's 10 times more valuable than to get them to talk to each other about it once they have done that and build some class time in for them to actually look at that and explain what they meant in writing those
Mhm.
comments.
Lauren.
So I have a question based on what John said. I 100% agree that the instructor is the one that should be ultimately determining the grade of the student. What happens to the information from a rubric where the students in peer review have actually given a grade or points or whatever on that rubric, where does that go to? And how does that calculate into the student's actual grade? Does it go anywhere?
It was not calculated anything. It shows up, and I believe that if there are like 5 people who peer grading or peer reviewing, you'll see 5 rubrics with their 5 things on it. It might average them out into 1, but that final grade that they get is blank. So each of the categories will get suggestions, but it is up to you as the instructor to do that final and then submit it.
So you just find out that, oh yes, they did do their peer review as assigned, but you don't.
Would it show up in the speed grader, you think?
I'm trying to figure out where, you know.
So for example, if everyone gives Charles a 5, does it sort of a little gray 5 appear saying this is the average the student received?
Well, and where does that show up?
Right,
Does that
yeah.
actually go into the grade book? And if it doesn't,
What's the point?
where's the value?
Yeah.
How is that information valued, and where does the instructor
Fair, yeah.
see that I actually reviewed his stuff and gave him a score?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't just open it up and say, oh, he did his thing, and then close it.
Yeah.
You know, where's that information go in Canvas?
I do know if I put an assignment and I have them have a paper and they have to have peer reviews, when I go to grade it in SpeedGrader, every comment they made to someone else all shows up right behind it. So I can see what 6
see the
things
comment.
they said to somebody else,
Okay.
Well, actually, now that you see that.
Now, is it also 6 rubrics, or is it just the comments?
I don't even,
How would
I
you-
think rubrics I just do
Yeah.
for myself. I don't even know if they can see it, and if they're filling them out, I don't always use the rubrics either. I do a lot of free form
Everyone gets their
writing.
own rubric showing up so that Charles would be able to see the 5 people who grade their 5 choices on the rubrics.
And I, as the
But I'm not
instructor,
sure.
would see all
And you
of
would
those
see all
as
5 of
well.
those as well.
Lauren, so
I
it does
think.
appear,
Okay.
this would be Sarah's grade, it's anonymous obviously, I guess.
Or here, let me refresh. Can you refresh?
And there was an option.
And this is on the instructor side.
Right.
Yeah, because I just submitted a comment, so you can maybe see how they come together. Okay. So you can see that I say, here are my comments for Charles, but you can't tell who graded who gave the 5 points necessarily.
Okay.
What happens if you click that view rubric?
And where do I see that Sarah was the
So
one
that's
that?
your.
Because
that's
if you go into Sarah's, you'll see, if you go up into Sarah's in the SpeedGrader, you'll see what she wrote, and then you'll see her comment that she wrote.
Oh, you'll see it.
Yeah. It should be.
No, I think I
Used to do
just-
that for me last year. Paper view, what's under the other view? Cause it would be, I would have those and they would all show up, everything that they had said to everybody would be right on
So
your.
there's nothing that tells me necessarily that Sarah was the one that made the comment. So I don't know how to give her any credit for putting in that effort.
Yeah.
Okay. This is kind of the clunky
Well-
things that I struggle with.
Well, and
I think
I
it's
would
so
see
honest.
it to grade other people's
Okay.
things.
And I would say the challenge I've always had trying to figure this out is that, yeah, I'm not a real teacher in a real class with real students. So this is where it might be good. Do one that is worth 0 points the first week and just get everybody get in it, and you spend a little bit of class time looking over the shoulders of the students, say, what are you seeing, where are you seeing it, and then kind of figure out. I know that's not always the best case scenario, but because I'm totally with, forgive me, instructor here, that you got to be able to see that. I mean, as an instructor, you've got to be able to see. It's a matter of where is it? Where is it?
I know I've got one, so I'll look
And the
at
fact that you guys have thrown together a demo real quick here, you know, there might be something in the process that is
Can you look and see if there's another
inaccurate.
peer review activity or something that?
Yeah, if you go to the assignment,
As in the grades or something?
peer reviews, yeah, actually, yeah, click on the peer reviews, there you go. Are there any trackings there of who has completed? Because, oh, you know what, those haven't even assigned yet, so.
Yeah, 'cause those are all like the people.
You were in the grader before, and I'm just wondering if in the grader, does it automatically create a peer review assignment? That
Yeah, that's.
In the grader or in the grade book?
either SpeedGrader or the grade book, I mean, SpeedGrader's looking at content in the grade book.
So Megan, for you, you should plug in the image.
That's an Excel sheet actually.
Oh.
And with a formula in it. The column
Yeah, then it's
C has
completely
formula.
dead.
Yeah.
Because it's just a PDF.
Yeah, the results of the formula exist, but
It's not active at all.
But yeah, you can't see what I did to get that number.
Unfortunately, it is now 2 o'clock, and I do not want to keep you any longer than you already have been here. But just to recap very quickly, we have gone through quite a series of use cases for peer review, either using video, using Excel sheets, uploading just basic documents either as text. Ongoing feedback is still the question. How can that be ongoing? I suppose same with the collaborative. Scale might significantly be an issue for a course, especially if you have multiple people peer reviewing. You're not able to identify whether or not they as individuals have completed their peer review. In class, outside or inside, I don't know. I guess I'm just old school and I prefer everything to be done in class. Does it facilitate grading? I don't know if you can get through some of the clunkiness. And the questions of rubrics have come up. So yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of peer review. I like the idea of peer review.
You'll like it, or if you don't like it, the second or third or fifth time you'll like it. You'll get better at it, or at least you get used to it.
So on your way out, if you wouldn't mind dropping a few notes here, let us know your thoughts and comments for next time around. And also, if you have additional questions, we have the room until 2:30, so we can sort of play around with some of these other features and go through some of the other details. Russell, looks like your wheels are spinning.
Yeah, just thinking through the mechanics.
Awesome. So enjoy your afternoons, and tomorrow it is student curated content at 8:30 in the morning, and we will have bagels.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had something I had these, but maybe it was in a discussion and not a
I was going to say, that's a good point. That's a good point. Might have been the discussion because each object will look a little different.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
but yeah, that's so
Well,
actually, if you
that's what I was looking at. I was looking for one where I had actually had one. I was know that I had these people who were talking about each other's things. I just
Which is in this class.
online knowledge in the discussion.
It's a survey course on how these things operate.
Yeah.
Like I know I saw them because they had
As far as I
comments
can tell, it was like a split.
who said what about this and it was really
That's,
interesting.
and I'm glad you said that about it being a discussion.
I also have tech course on the horizon all right. I'm late for class, so you like are the people
Yes, ma'am.
So I have some comments we have students have to share you and stuff over certain amount of hours they help with that project. It's on there. And it has to be added up to a total of 15 hours over the semester, but sometimes people might do 2 in one week. So Canvas is not spread out, and I have no way.
I've wandered in.
I don't know how old you are.
I would just say I don't have immediate experience.
We have like
Thanks for coming in.
I'm so sorry, I'm looking for a business card.
Okay.
So yeah, if you want to get back in the line and
Okay. Yeah, because maybe I'll talk about because those 2 things would be really
yeah, and this is cool. I'm known about it since the inception of Canvas here on campus, but I've been into a bunch of things.
And especially those 2 that's really
Feedback, don't bring feedback that we like Charles.
So, but they do, we just want something that is right, as like a certain amount of priorities, but it's not even
You sound like you're already the point where I don't need to prepare you to let you down gently, because it may not be doable, but it's still.
I just assume he's not like
Exactly right. And I want to know that it's not doable, so I can help with that.
I'm really very for
See,
See, I can probably do that. I probably do that 8 hours a week, and then I get tired of it. It's different students.
I mean, if you're teaching in a class on editing or on critical reading or on that kind of thing, you might say, did you do a good job catching all of the things?
So we're integrated, but
Go now. Here are your resources, read them.
And if you just said good job, good job, good job, your participation really wasn't worth anything for either of you. So.
Because I never knew where to start. If I had already knew the material I wanted,
It depends on whether you're going
but if I
and your
didn't know
courses are
if I didn't know the materials that I
how to
wanted
write,
to
or teaching
during my
people how
research, so I'm trying to figure out
to
what's
think
available.
about writing, or, you could probably do a thing, a peer review, where the
Shut down and teach
peer review is
people
anything other than unemployment.
write a farm paper, your job is to figure out how to give her feedback. In that case, here's what you do, it's what feedback is.
It was catching on when I was in high school. Was catching on, getting
Appropriate success.
So going back to what we had
And then sort of is it your rooming out, is that like your principal or is that sort of secondary to, I just want.
and it's not on the
Thinking about writing.
If you're thinking about writing for audience, then you're doing that as a recruit.